wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Thank you.
It's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, Angela Yee, DJ Envy had to step out, but we got two very special guests, Miss Joy-Ann Reid and Tiffany Cross are here. Good morning.
Morning. Happy Friday.
How y'all feeling?
Excellent. Glad to be here, brother.
Happy to see y'all.
Always good to see you.
You have The Culture is Black Women, comes on Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern on MSNBC, streaming on Peacock TV. What is that about?
Well, the title says it all.
Yes.
As you know, even though Black women represent such a small sect of society, where we go, everybody else will follow. And so we drive so much about the culture. And so this whole concept kind of came to be because Joy and I went on vacation with our group of friends, our common friends.
Yep.
So it was me, Angela Rye, Jamel Hill, Carrie Champion. I always leave out people. Brittany Packnett-Cunningham, Aaron Haynes.
Sunny.
Our whole little crew. Sunny
Hostin,
Hostin, exactly.
yeah.
Our
Latasha
whole crew.
Brown.
Latasha Brown, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, Latasha. And we just had the most amazing time. We really did. And we sat around and luxuriated and loved on each other and talked and shared. And from that, when we came back and posted pictures, so many people are like, oh, what organization is this? And how do I sign up to go on the next trip? And it was like, oh, this is just our girls, our little girl trip. And we thought, how can we expand this conversation? How can we invite more women to this table? And so Joy and I came up with this concept of inviting women in a way that would be on television, a digital presence, so people can feel they were part of the conversation. So we knew we wanted to do this, but I really didn't know how it was going to look. And that's where the amazing Miss Joy came in and had her own vision for it.
Well, so basically when Tiffany came back and told me the idea, I was like, the perfect way to do this is to kind of recapture the energy that we had in Cabo. And so let's do a dinner. I was like, we'll throw a dinner. We'll have people who come from all different walks of life, people who are in sports, people who are sportscasters, people who are actresses, politicians. We'll just put them all together, military, and everybody will be at the table. And then we figured if we're going to do it in New York, you got to do it in Harlem, of course, because that's the base.
Minton's.
And listen, I
love it there.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
I took my husband there for a birthday dinner years ago, and I just love the fact that it's got that speakeasy vibe. It's got that Harlem Renaissance vibe. It's like it's the perfect place to do something like this.
Yes.
And the food is great. Well, see, we did cheat a little bit because I'm friends with Melba Wilson.
Okay, yeah.
So we invaded Minton's. We literally brought Melba's into Minton's, so it was like a merger. So we had the Minton's vibe and we had the little jazz vibe, but we had the food from Miss Melba.
Oh, that's beautiful.
How important is that sisterhood that y'all talking about? Like all of y'all being together, loving on each other. How important is that?
It got us through the pandemic. I mean, it really started as, this was like our pandemic support group because, we're all in media. We all take a lot of the same hits. We all have a lot of the same haters. But we knew each other. And I think for all of us, we knew each other in different ways for different lengths of time. Like each of us had different kinds of relationships. Some of us, I had booked some of these ladies on my show, but I didn't know them all that well personally. I've known Tiffany. I've known Angela for a really long time, but I didn't know some people. Some people I was fascinated with. I was like, I really want to know Latasha Brown more, but I just knew her as a guest. And so we had gotten together because we were like talking our way through the pandemic and through all the stresses of just being Black women in this business. And so we were kind of supporting each other as a text group. Yeah. And then it was Tiffany's, I think it was your idea, where you were like, we need to make this a vacation. We need to all go somewhere together.
Like
and that's how it, and we turned it real.
Would you say that, Angela and Jamel?
Listen.
They put it together.
They put it together. But I just want to add the importance about sisterhood, too, because there's sometimes there are images of Black women in media where they're not supportive of each other and it's not a sisterhood. And that's just not been our experience. And I always tell, particularly younger Black women, root for everybody. Root for everybody Black, but root for everybody because you never know where life is going to take you. And when you get into situations, you want everybody around you to do something dope. I want everybody around me to be at the top of their craft because if I get into some sugar honey iced tea, I want to look to my left and my right, and everybody around me is in a position where they can hire me if they need to, or they can save me if they need to. And when you are bickering and, involved in that, petty stuff, or if you think there's only room for one, or you have sharp elbows, you're really hurting and damaging yourself.
Yeah,
but also just be a good person.
It never feels good to feel like you're all alone.
Right.
And you know what else is important? I was thinking about even here at iHeart, right, having our executive vice president of programming, Thea Mitchell, as a Black woman to be here because I never had somebody that could really go to bat for you in the workspace like that, right? And at MSNBC, you guys also have Rashida Jones. And she's the first Black woman to head, a news outlet like MSNBC. So how has that been in that experience? Has that changed things for you? Did it make it easier to get certain things done?
Oh, for this, it made it easy because when we walked in to do the pitch, she got it immediately. Like, we didn't have to explain it. It didn't take like an hour to pitch this. She really understood it organically because she's living it too. And of course, for her, that's a lonely space as well. I mean, MSNBC actually does a little bit better than most. That there are black executives, there are black women executives. I've worked for a black woman most of the time that I've worked at MSNBC. Even before Rashida, one of her, great colleagues and mentors was my boss.
Right.
So I think she had some of the experience of having that support. But when, Tiffany, wrote the original pitch, I have to give Tiffany all the credit for it. We walked in there and originally we were trying to say it was going to be called Sis. And she was like, and so, when women come in and we're like, black women say Sis, she goes, no, I don't, I got that.
You don't need to explain it to me.
I understand.
Now, this also is a series though, right? So the first one is black women, but then you guys are also focusing on Latina women.
Yep.
AAPI and indigenous women, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And this was like, the idea is that, black women, I think, shape the culture in such a profound way. But in each of these other groups, they also have their own cultural identity that have shaped the country in their own way. And so we wanted them to have their own table. And the idea, and this is really, I'm giving Tiffany so much credit here because she really is she's the originator of this plan and the person who really birthed it. I was like the godmother,
Well, she brought all the creativity. So it really was, it was a marriage in many ways.
Yeah.
Joy is married, but she was a marriage between us in many ways because, we had a vision for how we wanted this to look. And when black women gather, it's different than when Latinas gather.
Mm-hmm.
It's different when indigenous women gather, different when API women gather. And so, my whole career, I have always had the Fred Hampton approach, like let's build coalitions, let's reach across the aisle. And when I organize in these communities, I respect it enough to know that I'm a guest of this culture. I'm not a member of it. Like, you all deserve your space to have that conversation. And we really wanted other women who really are the keepers of the culture to have their own space to have this conversation. And like with so many other things, when black women create something, all these movements are modeled after what we create.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when we created this, I knew that we would want to bring other people to have to convene their own table. So that was important.
I know black women are the mother of civilization, but do we always have to be the mothers to everybody else? Remember when Cara, right? From Essence?
Caroline Wanga?
Caroline Wanga. She said something that I thought was so real. She was like, inclusive and diversity in corporate America always means everybody else. We can't just say just black. Why can't it ever just be just black?
Yeah.
No, you're right. And I think in this country, the challenge is that the original sin of this country was against the indigenous people and then against the other indigenous people on this earth, and that is black people, right? We were the indigenous people in Africa. Mm-hmm. They brought us here because, we could survive the trials of slavery. And most of what's been done that's been wrong in this country has been done wrong to us first. We've been the ones experimented on to be, and literally, figuratively, and literally. And so it's hard because when you try to do then, as you said, diversity programs and issues, it gets expanded beyond us pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think, unfortunately, in this country, it's easier to sell the idea of saving people that are not black. Right, of sort of doing programs that will help anybody but black. In order to even get our civil rights, our civil rights programs done, we had to make sure that they're economic, that they benefited, poor white people and black. You had to marry us together. There is just an allergy to blackness in this country that is a problem, and I don't know how you get past it. But I think when we, as people who are oppressed people, it doesn't help us to exclude other oppressed people. It helps us to include them because it makes our army bigger. Yeah. And I think we need the biggest army we can get in this country.
It's so much divisiveness already.
Yeah.
I think that I totally agree with that. It's like this group against, and I feel like it's done purposefully from the top. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like even when the pandemic first started, it was the Kung flu virus, and then everybody hates Asian people and Chinese people, and so it's like everybody attacking everybody when really there's a common enemy here.
That's right. Yeah.
And even the whole Stop AAPI Hate, which is obviously a movement we all support, but you saw how the media jumped on that and tried to make it about black people and AAPI people. You're gonna leapfrog over all that white supremacy, which is how we got here in the first place. So you might have a few random sporadic mentally ill people attack folks, but you got sane ass white people around here assaulting AAPI members of the AAPI community. And I would also just say, because a lot of people say that to me, I'm very unapologetic on my show about censoring the rising majority of this country. And a lot of people will say to me, like, well, why are you including them? Or they're white adjacent, or they're anti-black. And yes, anti-Black sentiment exists in all communities for sure. But I do think if we are to save this democracy, because no matter how they make us feel, this is our home, our ancestors built this for free, as our sister Angela says. If we're going to save this democracy, we have to have some intellectual curiosity about our fellow countrymen. And we have to lock arms with them and build these types of coalitions. And so it doesn't help when we dismiss other people because, quite frankly, this country has not been too kind to any communities of color. And we need to learn from them.
And the only way we're a rising majority, I mean, Black folks are 12% of this country. At this point, you know, the Latino community is 15% of the country. We're only a rising majority together. And so, you know, if we're gonna fight this white supremacy problem, you know, that's now a literal national security problem. At this point, it's a terrorism problem. And so we have to fight it as a coalition.
I agree. I just wish they felt like that about us. That's all.
Yeah,
I think more do than you would think. I think more do you would think. If you, for one thing, like the reparations movement, for instance, which is something that we're finally having a real conversation about. You know, I'm kind of actually surprised. You know, that we're actually having a serious, you know, legislative conversation about reparations. One of the groups that's the most supportive of the reparations movement are Japanese Americans because they experienced internment, they experienced a reparation. And they are very supportive, just as a community. Their organizing communities are very much supportive of reparations. So I think there's more support than is visible.
Right. Okay, now, I also know on the first episode, on this episode in particular, The Culture is Black Women, you have a sit down with Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yes.
So we would try to get our hands on the screen ahead of time, but you guys had it all locked up and we couldn't get our hands on it.
Yeah.
But do you feel like for her as the vice president, she's gotten treated way worse than any other vice president in our history?
100%. Absolutely. I mean, look, they've always said vice president job isn't worth a bucket of spit. Like that was the theme of it. It's a tough job. You mostly do funerals and you do the jobs the president doesn't want to do. They give you the portfolio they don't want, right? That's usually what the job is. But I think for Kamala Harris, she's had like the triple problem of being a woman, and so people not being willing to respect her the way they would respect a male vice president, of being Black, which we already know that what that carries with it is the anti-Blackness comes, you know, with the package, and then also being vice president at a time that is really, really difficult, where her portfolio, think about what's on her plate, what they've given her and what she's accepted. Voting rights, which is dead on arrival in Congress. Immigration, which she's the daughter of an immigrant, they sent her down to be the one to be like, do not come. They sent her down to give that message. And she had police reform, also dead on arrival. So it's like she has the toughest portfolio in that administration. And so she takes the most hits, but she also doesn't get her flowers for things that she's working on. Things like, you know, funding for HBCUs. She was ahead in that, but they didn't push her out there to let her own that. Why not have her take the applause for the things that she's doing well? You know, everything around her is the stuff that isn't working. And so she's taking a lot of the blame for things that are really the fault of bad legislating, fault of a Senate that will not legislate, where you have two Democrats who won't help. And so, you know, the fact that Democrats refuse to fully use their power in the Senate, that's not her fault. She's the head of the Senate, but she can't make them vote. She can't make Joe Manchin behave. So I think she's getting more hits than she deserves and not the credit that she deserves.
That's why I wish you would call him out, because, you know, when you don't call him out, it looks like everybody's complicit. When you don't call out a Manchin, when you don't call out a Senator, they think that everybody's, you know, complicit.
That's true.
I think you have a good point there, Charlamagne, because, you know, in politics, it does feel like sometimes that people in the Democratic Party are operating from a playbook pre-2016. Because Donald Trump came in and, you know, ripped that up. You know, it's like, this is the new game. And so when you have people operating with a modicum of dignity. And I know, you know, our forever floaters, Michelle Obama said, when they go low, you go high.
Yeah.
That ain't my ministry. You know, I'm like, let's get in these streets and throw some hands if that's what it's going to be. And I think you have to run campaigns that inspire people. And when people don't connect with you on that level, Joy and I talk about this all the time. Madam Vice President, and you know this, Charlamagne, she black, okay?
Yes.
She went to Howard, she AK, and when she talks to you, it is, I mean, she sounds
She's so
like
regular.
me. She's so regular
She
and
really
approachable.
is.
And it's unfortunate that more people don't see
see
that.
it.
And there's also just the dumbing down of the American electorate. You know, people don't understand civics, they don't understand politics, they don't understand how things work. And, you know, when people are occupying or employing, I should say, hashtag activism, and thinking they've done something and have all the criticism for everybody else. All the people who are like, well, if I was alive during the civil rights movement, well, guess what? Whatever you're doing right now, that's what you would have done during the civil rights movement.
Without Twitter, though, there's no hashtag.
Right.
That's the only
exactly.
thing.
And what I try to tell people, because I have even my kids, I'm an old bitch at this point. My kids are grown. They're in their 20s. They all vote. I make them vote. And I literally am like, do you want that cell phone bill? Because you still on my plan, so you need to vote. So I really push them. But I mean, even they will say to me, why? What's the point? What are we getting? And I always try to remind people, if you really think about what did Trump actually do? Like, okay, we know what he said. He's going to build the wall. Maxwell's going to pay for it. There is no wall. Okay, he didn't do that.
That quote platinum
the platinum
plan.
People
really thought
where's your platinum?
Was something that was going to give us $100 million, but it wasn't nothing like that in there.
His one big accomplishment during his presidency, during his 4 years, he did one thing. He passed the biggest tax cut that rich people ever got in the history of this country. That tax cut went like 80% to 400 people. The 400 richest people in this country were bathing in that money. And if you think about what we really got, what anybody else below that really got, it really wasn't much. But people, they perceived him to have done a lot.
Because the marketing, and the PR to make you believe.
And the
they didn't really do anything.
And the stimmies would putting his name on them.
He was
That's
designing
just
the
marketing.
checks, yeah.
But the thing is, I've seen a lot of, I'm curious your thoughts. I'm taking over your show. You ask the questions. But I have a question for you. Because I do see a lot of black men who are older hip-hop heads, like, buy into that BS. Like, I've seen them adopt conservative talking points. And it's baffling to me.
And also be like, why don't we just do that? If Donald Trump did it, why don't we use our executive power to do this?
I'm curious
because people like gangster shit. And, to what Joy said earlier and what you said, like, Trump ripped up a playbook. So if you can do that for bad, why can't you do that for good?
Yeah.
Like, it's really just that simple.
Yeah. No, and Democrats don't have that in their DNA. Democrats are not. And one of my biggest criticisms of the Democratic Party is, number one, they don't know how to fight. They just don't know how to fight like a Republican. If you really want to know how to fight Republicans, you got to find an ex-Republican, and they know how to fight.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, and this is the unfortunate piece, they're not good at fighting for us.
Yeah.
They don't have the language, and they don't have the reflex of fighting for us. We've had to force them. I mean, even during the Kingian era, they had to literally force the Democratic president to do it. You had to push them. It's not like they were willing to do it.
Yeah.
And so they don't have that reflex. And so we have to kind of give them the language. And it feels like we're constantly pulling and begging, even though we give them our votes. And so I think that's part of the frustration, too. It doesn't feel like they're fighting. Like sometimes it's not just fighting, it's being seen to be fighting. It's being visible fighting. And they're not comfortable with that.
But even when they do fight for us, it's like a whisper to us. Like, hey, black people, when I get in office,
I got that Juneteenth for you. Do you want
But everybody else, they're like, we gonna put this
we
shit
do have a holiday.
We gonna tell everybody
We are off on it.
We are. Say that. We are.
Like, even yesterday, Joe Biden signed an executive order for LGBTQ hate bill.
He did.
And it's just like, you don't see what's going on with black people in this country?
But I mean, they also did sign, to give them credit, for the first time in 100 and something years, there is now an anti-lynching act. That took since, they started, I think in 1904, they started trying to pass an anti-lynching act. That finally passed. That's something Kamala Harris worked on as a senator. Cory Booker, the two of them were the two. It finally passed, right? And we'll give them credit. But that's actually law. So there's actually an anti-lynching bill, federal anti-lynching bill.
So it's not just an executive order, it's an actual law.
And that's stronger than an executive order.
Right.
And another thing, too, it's like it seems like you can't even question the Democratic Party. Like think about when y'all did y'all demanded that he basically pick a black woman to be his VP.
Yeah.
Y'all got flack from other Democrats on
from
that.
other black people.
From black people.
That's how deep white supremacy went. Like, other black folks, like, don't you mess up with Mr. Charlie. He been good. Like,
we eat good. Don't talk about it. He messing us up.
It's like, fuck that. Like, we built this country. We put so much into this nation, and everybody else gets to ask for what they want. Gun rights activists, they get to ask for what they want. The LGBTQ community gets to ask for what they want. The Latino community gets to ask for what they want. Why me, the people who I descend from the folks who built this country, why can't I demand that this country, if we say a government by the people, of the people, for the people, why can't for the people include me and people who look like me?
That's right.
And demanding works because look, but Joe Biden said he was going to do two things. He said he was going to have a black woman vice president. He was demanded of it. He did it. He said, I'm going to put a black one on the Supreme Court. He did it.
That's right.
Demanding works. And so I think that's the other piece of it is that we can't be passive in our democracy. We as Black people need to demand some more stuff because they do owe it to us. They really can't win elections without us. Right. Yes, we're only 12%, but we, Black women in particular, are the highest percentage voting population in this country.
That's what I was going to say. Black women really do move elections.
Yes.
And I want to ask, how concerned are you about upcoming elections, seeing what's been going on around the nation right now?
I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'm worried. I mean, I'm genuinely worried about this country because that sense of people feeling frustrated and feeling like they're not getting enough and it's not worth voting is extremely dangerous. Because if we sit back and say, you know what, I'm going to punish these Democrats, let the Republicans win, you have no idea who you're dealing with. The Republican Party has been eaten alive by genuine white supremacists. Mm-hmm. I mean, genuine ones. This movement, the Tea Party movement was one step toward it. They've gone overboard. These are people who don't believe elections should count. They don't believe we should have the right to vote. They believe that we shouldn't have the right to make white people feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. They're literally passing laws saying you can't make white people feel uncomfortable.
You can't even educate people about what really happened in the country.
And so, I mean, and they're willing to punish businesses who were too nice to gay people. Like, we're at a point now where it's fascism. It's straight fascism. And if you sit back, that's how it takes over. So I'm worried that they've done a good job of demoralizing us. And we should not be easily demoralized. You know, we need to make sure that, look, we're not voting for change that you're going to get immediately. Republicans waited 60 years to get rid of Roe v. Wade, and they didn't give a damn. They never got tired.
They play the long game.
Right?
Yeah.
They play the long game. They're like Al-Qaeda. They're like, if it takes 100 years to defeat your society, we're going to do it. And we'll keep voting and voting and voting until we get the craziest people in there that will give us what we want. We say, I didn't get what I wanted this election, I ain't voted again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's exactly what they want.
Yeah, that's voter suppression, really.
That is.
But I also think, I think it's two things. One, for sure, like, we have to participate in this democracy. Like, it is something for us to protect and empower. But I also think when you feel like people aren't talking to you, and you feel like there has not been a tangible change in my life overnight. You know, we have the ACA, you know, Obamacare, all that, but people want to know, you know, what, like, I've been in the hood a long time, you know, and ain't nothing changed. And when you see on television, like, I've seen so many conversations about Latino voters without a Latino voter in sight. Black voters, ain't no black voters on the panel. Mm-hmm. And you have all these cute little colloquialisms, you know, like NASCAR dads and soccer moms, you know. Well, that shit don't resonate with us. Like, what about the basketball dads or, you know, the auntie voting block or the cousin voting block? You know what I mean?
The auntie voting block is real, you know. It's powerful.
But isn't it something that those little nicknames for us that equally apply don't exist, and people feel like, well, where am I in this conversation?
Be out there making
sure they got
the pamphlets.
They serious. And they're gonna give you a hard candy when you need it. They be like, I got a hard candy, and you better vote. You know, and I love them.
Have either one of you ever flirted with the idea of running for office?
No.
I would end up divorced. My husband would. He would be like, no, no, because you know what? I know too much about politics. I feel like it's such a dirty game, and I'm bad at asking for money. Mm-hmm. And you have to be real good at asking for money to be a politician, and I'm bad at it.
Because I just feel like we also need to encourage people who would be great to represent us to run.
That's true.
Because sometimes there's a lack of, like, you're just voting for the person who is the lesser of two evils instead of the person that you're really enthusiastic about.
That's very true. And it's true. And people that like me are like saying, ooh, I see it, it's too dirty. The one job I would love to have, I think the best political job in the world is mayor. I would be mayor of New York City in a heartbeat. I would love it. I would love it. I would love to be mayor.
Do you like our mayor now, Eric Adams?
I think he's interesting. He's interesting. I'm still trying to figure him out. I don't understand him. I see why he got elected, though.
I like him. He lives
he's
right
no
by
nonsense.
me. You know, I'm from Brooklyn, and he was our Brooklyn borough president. Yes, so I was really out, like, doing marches with him during the pandemic, and I did see him. You know, and he's like a very approachable person.
He's a regular person, and I think that's one of the reasons people like him, because he sounds like your uncle. He sounds like you know, your cousin, your uncle. You know him, and so I think he's interesting. I hope that he's successful. I'm a little bit worried that he's going to bring back that Giuliani era.
But we need to demand things, to your point, and make sure that, because I do feel like he's somebody that you can access and have to sit down with 100%. And have that conversation, and it's important to keep doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. The police thing is my one worry with him, but like you said, I think you could talk to him about that, and he would actually have that conversation.
And for whatever reason, I think people are more receptive of that when it comes from a black man than a black woman. Mm-hmm. People can take, you know, I have even colleagues and friends who say a lot of shit, and I say the same thing. Mm-hmm. And baby, I mean, the white women will take it from the black men, but if I say it, it's like, we don't like her. You know?
Oh, you labeled.
All the time.
We literally just had this conversation this morning, because I said that in this industry, whenever a black woman is outspoken, they get labeled difficult.
100%.
I've never seen it fail. Like all they got to do is be outspoken, speak their mind, don't take no bullshit, and they will be labeled difficult.
Absolutely, and angry.
Yeah,
and angry. And the thing is, here's first of all, I always find the angry black woman label interesting because we got a lot of reasons to be angry.
Oh, absolutely.
This country makes us angry every day. You know, what people should be shocked by is how poised and calm we are. They're lucky we're not actually angry, you know, because you think about it, what we've put up with, what we still have to put up with in the year of our Lord 2022, what year is it? We're still putting up with this shit? Like, we should be angry. They're lucky we're not angrier, you know, and you're right, we're labeled difficult because the only kind of black person that unfortunately the sort of majority can really take is somebody who's entertaining them and who's kind of like has a red nose and big red shoes on. You put the big red nose and the red shoes on, they're good. But as soon as you take it off, they're uncomfortable.
Can we get back to the culture is black women too for a second? Because you guys will have Maria Taylor on.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about that because I know she's going to be speaking about her departure from ESPN for the first time. I always feel like sports might be worse than hip hop for women when it comes to working in that field as a journalist.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm so interested to hear what she has to say.
And she gave the tea.
Yeah.
She did spill the tea.
She did spill the tea. But the thing is, what Maria Taylor went through is going to be relatable to so many of us show up, and the assumption is you didn't deserve to get here. You didn't work hard to get here. When we know we work harder than most to achieve certain levels of success. And she talks about, you know, not only the way that the woman who accused her of just being an affirmative action hire, essentially.
You got the job because you're black.
Right. Exactly. Fuck her. But also she talks about the way her company and the colleagues, you know, treated her, which was another disappointing thing. I have to say again, I was watching these athletes come out there and speak on behalf of Rachel and say, you know, like, well, she always been good to me, you know? And I just couldn't imagine how that felt for Maria Taylor, because you remember what happened with Jamel Hill at the same company, and Mike was like, I ain't doing the show without Jamel. Like, everybody rallied around her, and it just broke my heart. And we didn't know Maria, but we knew Maria.
That's right.
Because she was us. And I that's really what the special is. We don't know all the black women who will be watching, but we do know you, and we understand you because we are you. And it was really generous of Maria to be so generous in spirit and share that story, because it enraged us, but also made us feel empowered to rally around her.
That's great, because a lot of women in the workplace have issues, and you might feel like you're alone. You can't speak about it. You don't want to lose your job. Then afterwards, you don't want to speak about it because you don't want to get blackballed. Right. And then also sometimes you feel like nobody cares.
Yeah, absolutely. And you feel, and the thing is that we don't have enough spaces internally in corporate America, even the sort of official ones they set up. You don't necessarily feel that you're safe. You know, if you have a complaint that is uniquely about being a black woman in the space, it's like, who do you talk to? And, you know, so that's why, I mean, I know when I first came back to MSNBC, I was at the Griot, and we literally had our little low ceiling. They had us in the back. You know, they didn't even give us like a lot of space. We were like in the back. It was the Latino team and the black team. We used to call ourselves the Black Tino Revolution. We were back there alone. And we used to have almost everybody black that was like the one-off on their team. The one black person on this team. The one black producer on that team. The talent that was on this team. They would come and they would sit with us. They would just come and hang out with us because they're like, I just need to be around black people. I don't even need to say anything. I don't even need to talk. I just literally need to be in the presence of my people for 5 minutes just to be able to decompress from being at work. And, you know, and like I said, MSNBC is a decent workplace. It's not, there's much worse places. But even in a place that's not the worst, you still need that moment because there's certain things you're going through at work that only other black people can understand.
We twist ourselves in knots to make other people comfortable. You know what I mean? I mean, you have a room full of all black people, okay? If one person walks in who's not black, the entire energy changes. We can have a conversation here today that, you know, we would all understand, but somebody who is not a member of the culture might not. You know, if I'm like, ooh, you put your foot in these greens, somebody's like, why would they put
their foot in their greens?
Right, exactly.
Greens with feet in?
Exactly.
Doesn't seem sanitary.
Exactly.
Also, I don't think there's anything wrong with hiring somebody just because they're black.
Yeah, me.
I think that's what it should be.
They do that.
You're a qualified person.
If they're qualified.
Yeah.
I mean, because
but
by
think about
the
how
way,
many white people that
I was just going to say,
aren't qualified.
Yeah, I have a problem with that, though. I mean, you shouldn't be hiring anybody who's not.
I think any executive that says, hey, we need more black people in here, fine.
Yeah. We're going to teach you.
That's right.
Right. If you're not good, we're going to get you good.
And
I agree with you on that.
One of the conversations that I had with Vice President Harris, and unfortunately we weren't rolling at this time, this was afterwards, we both talked about that. Because sometimes you have to be intentional about saying, this person may not have the most experience, but they're smart,
right?
They're capable, and they can be taught. And
that's right.
in the same situation, somebody in the majority culture might say, you know what, this is my cousin's son. This is my friend's daughter. Let me go again and give them the job. And so they're getting the job specifically because of who knows them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can say, I have this position open and I really want to hire somebody black. I did that. I literally am like, I literally want, our assistants are sitting out there, our APs out there. And it was really in my spirit to say, normally the people who get these assistant positions are affluent, young, and white. And some of them are brilliant. Like my previous AP, brilliant young white man. He's like, we call him the sixth Reid. He's like family. I love him. But I'm like, when it was time to replace him, I was like, my spirit is telling me there is a young black man out there who can do this job, who may not have the most experience, who may never have worked in news. I'm going to find this young man. I'm going to find him. And I literally was determined and found him.
He went to Howard. My assistant went to Morehouse. Yeah. Her assistant's to Alpha. My assistant's to Sigma. Like it's a real black team.
So they be beefing with each other.
Right. No, they don't be beefing. But I mean, they're alone. I mean, if you think about who are the APs in the company, it's a lot of Ivy League young people who are not, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be there. But it's not, there aren't a lot of...
They're not representing America.
That's right.
That that's all you have.
Right. And so we were very intentional. We both were very intentional about there is a young black man who can do that job, and I'm going to find them. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
I learned that from Ava DuVernay. I remember first time I ever interviewed Ava DuVernay in like 2017. She was like, I intentionally hire women. I intentionally hire women of color. And I said to her, you don't think, people will look at you funny, for doing that? And she was like, I don't care. They do it all the time.
Right.
And our boss's boss, Cesar Condi, he literally put an initiative here, in place, and people may like it and some may not. And he said, our hiring is going to be 50% people of color. He's very intentional and made it a policy that's written down at NBC Universal, and said we are looking to bring in our incoming team needs to be diverse, and you need to make that intentional.
In front of the camera and off camera.
In front of the camera and off. And I mean, literally diversity, as you know, down to hair. Right. Hair and makeup when I first started doing it. My hair was getting sizzled off.
Oh, gosh, no.
Right? It's like we don't even have diversity there. You look at the camera crews. You look at the people who are behind the scenes, the directors, like, why shouldn't we deliberately say, let's diversify that? Because it's not like they're the people out there who are unqualified. It's that they don't have the connections to get the job.
It's interesting because I think everybody I've ever hired to work for me personally have all been women, and black women, and one Dominican, but like everybody. And I didn't like say it in my head that this is what I want. It just happens.
Yeah.
Like that for me. So.
And so many people say, well, we don't know where to find them. We don't know how to find qualified people, which is bullshit. It's such a lazy argument.
Qualified. Even like, look, I have my coffee shop in Brooklyn. Everybody who built at that space, from the electrician to our engineer, everybody is black. That built out the space.
Yeah, I have to tell you on our vacation, the gift bags. Angela and Jamel were very intentional about having everything black, and so they gifted us these Telfar bags. All the products in them were from black-owned companies. That's great. And these were huge bags.
Can I just say, though, on the gift bags, so just to go to this,
amazing.
So we knew there were going to be gift bags. You're going with some girlfriends. You're like, we're going to bring each other gift bags. Here I'm thinking, I'm going to bring some candles, and I'm going to bring like cute little gifts. Who knew that the gift bag was a big-ass Telfar bag? I was embarrassed. I was like, let me put my gift. My gift is inferior. I'm like, this ain't going in there.
Can I tell you what my gift was to put in? Pre-rolls.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great gift.
Okay.
Well, I thought
the pusher lady here is
That's a great gift on the trip.
But then Sunny had like gone to a jeweler and got like these machete necklaces, and I was like, oh, it wasn't even like a pack of them. Like, everybody had one pre-roll. I was like, oh, I'll just keep these.
The weed is appreciated. In the trailer of the show, Maria Taylor said, I wish there was a world in which that everything a black woman did, someone wasn't coming to dim that light or blow it out. How many times have y'all dealt with that?
Daily.
How much time you got?
I see your social media coming for you.
How much time you got? Yeah.
Daily.
It's hard because I do feel like black women get an extra dose of shade, and I don't know what that's about, but I do think it is because we are so culturally prominent. I think black men too. I think the culture, if you think about what is the right mad about? If you think about what they're really mad about, they're mad they don't control the culture. Well, who controls the culture? Who are the most prominent and popular athletes in the country. Even in NASCAR, Black people, right? Who runs tennis? The Williams sisters. And everyone who came after them, right? It's like, if you think about it, the culture has been so overtaken by Black people. And Black women are so prominent in deciding what's cool, what's culturally cool. That's what they're really mad about. They're mad because it used to be John Wayne. Now it ain't John Wayne. Yeah. You know, they're mad because they used to watch TV and it was Dan Rather. And I mean, I love Dan Rather, but all the newsmen were white. Now, I mean, Oprah. I mean, who's the greatest interviewer? Oprah. Like, I mean, it's the cultural takeover that they're really at core pissed off about, and that's what they're fighting.
Like, people get so mad at Gayle King when she does interviews for asking questions that I don't think they would be mad at anybody else.
No, anybody else could ask. Barbara Walters could ask it, and they'd be like, well, that's a great journalist, you know?
I also think it's the
Well,
first
it's Black
time
people
they're
who get
hearing
mad at Gayle, by the way.
Well,
everybody.
Yeah,
it's Black people.
on
who
some
be
interviews.
Yeah.
On
But
some interviews.
I think this is also the first time a lot of white people are hearing the thoughts and opinions and, you know, raw conversations. You know, social media has really democratized who has a voice in this space. And so, you know, people always think I say very controversial things on my show. And I'm like, let me just tell y'all, this is what we all talking about. Right. You know, like, I would love to say, oh, I'm just so brilliant, dropping all these, you know, knowledge bombs, but not really. Like, in any barbershop, in any cookout, any kitchen table, like, we're all saying the same things. And I think it is bothersome for white people who have always controlled the narrative to have someone wrest it away from them and put a mirror in front of their face and say, no, every time something tragic happens and we say this ain't America, we're like, this shit is as American as apple pie. Miss us with that. The whole January 6th thing, people sat back and watched that, and to hear, for us to watch that through our lens and for them to see us watching that. Even the whole thing about like the Trumps, you know, like, oh, Ivanka Trump and her team agreed to sit down with, you know, the prosecutor. Like, we ain't never seen a headline like that.
Right.
Pookie Jenkins from the south side of Chicago.
Agreed to sit down.
Talk to the prosecutor.
They're like, you know what, subpoena, think about it.
What do you think would be the outcome of these January 6th hearings that are happening? Like, what happens next? Like, is there charges against Donald Trump?
They said, the panelists said they have enough to indict.
Yeah.
But
I think there's more than enough to indict. I mean, anybody, if he was named, you know, Donald Jones, he'd already be in prison. Like, he would be doing 30 to life because he's committed so many crimes, from tax fraud to, you know, insurrection. He would be indicted with the Proud Boys. The problem I have, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, is that Merrick Garland, to me, is so cautious and he's so concerned about looking partisan that I fear that he'll feel it's a step too far to indict Donald Trump. Maybe people below him, anyone leading up to him. I think this guy Eastman should really get a really good lawyer and don't go the Giuliani route, like get a real lawyer, because I think he's in trouble. I think there are a lot of people who are going to be facing some seditious conspiracy charges, etc. I don't know about Trump, though.
I would think he's not partisan if he doesn't do something.
That's what I think, too. I don't understand. I mean, Fonnie Willis, though, is dead serious. Like, I mean, Trump should really be concerned about the Georgia DA. Yeah. Like, he's got some serious issues there. And I think he could be in for some fines here, but that's like, it's civil. So it's like he could end up paying some fines. I don't know. I worry that nothing will happen to him, and it'll prove that being president makes you immune from justice if you're a Republican.
Well, what we've seen is he's broken the law.
Over and over.
If this country is going to say it is okay for some people to break the law and it is okay for other people to do a 10-year bid on a dime bag, then that's going to further disenfranchise, I think, the voting population, because people will feel like none of this shit matters.
Nothing, and they'll do it again. I mean, the thing is that was a rehearsal.
Yeah.
They're going to do it again. And now they have so many people in place. Again, back to the conversation we were having before about voting. They're very intentional about making sure they put people from the school board right up to the presidency. They have captured, I mean, the Proud Boys run the Miami-Dade Republican Party now. That's how serious they are. They don't have these I give up moments. They don't give up. And so they've now taken over and captured so many state legislatures, so many governors, everyone's singing from the same songbook. If they try that again in 2024, they might do it. They might succeed. And God help y'all if it's DeSantis. Y'all gonna miss Donald Trump.
Over 100 of the election deniers won their election.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's terrifying.
They're about to take over the House if people aren't going to vote.
If people don't vote, they'll take the House and the Senate. And if people really believe that they have a plan that's going to fight inflation, I got a bridge to sell you. They have no plan to fight inflation. Their plan to fight inflation is ban critical race theory. Their plan to fight inflation is ban textbooks and Toni Morrison books.
Yeah.
They have no plan to do anything other than pass more tax cuts for more rich people because that's literally all they do.
I agree with y'all. It's just that the sense of urgency that they put into voters, they don't have for themselves. It's that at some point they got to start governing and legislating like democracy is on the brink.
And they don't. And I don't. Please make it make sense. I don't understand why the Democrats are so casual. Like they seem so calm. My hair is on fire, and they're just like, well, and it's like that's not gonna work. That energy's not working.
It's still mostly white people, and so they do not feel the impacts of these horrible policies the same way we do. And so it's not a sense of urgency. I had a whole panel with white women on my show. So I'm like, come sit at the table and let's talk about you all's voting habits. And I remember after Trump got elected, I was speaking somewhere and I was like, white women overwhelmingly voted for Trump. Conversations need to happen. And the white women were like, yes, like, please, let's do it. I'm like, no, not with me, with each other. Y'all talk to each other. That ain't my ministry. I don't need to be part of that conversation. But this white woman on my show, Lucy Caldwell, and she said, because I asked her why, and she said, I mean, it's not bad to be a white girl. No matter who's in office, we're not really impacted. And I thought that was a very honest answer. So they can step back and look at all of this and still go back to their world and their bubble, put a Black Lives Matter sign in the window and feel good about life and think, well, I did that. I tweeted support. I watched the movie. Absolutely. I made a donation and I'm done.
And the thing is, and I always say to our people, if you want to understand what power is and what power looks like, think about the fact that 20 white senators didn't even ask Mazie Hirono if she wanted to come or Cory Booker if he wanted to come. 20 white senators, 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats went in a room and split $1.7 trillion. That bridge, that Build Back, what is it? Not Build Back Better. They didn't do Build Back Better. The infrastructure bill.
Bipartisan infrastructure bill.
That bill is $1.7 trillion. They split in a room with nobody that looks like this room in there. They decided who's going to get it. They decided where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And if you don't think there's going to be maybe 100 new multi-millionaire contractors created off of that, and none of them are going to look like us, they are going to hand out $1.7 trillion that none of y'all had nothing to do with. That's power. That's power. And so there are people exercising power in Washington. It's just not us.
Right.
And so the only way to fix that is every single major piece of progressive legislation that even didn't help us at first eventually got to us. There were 60 Democrats in the Senate. Democrats ain't perfect. Democrats are, I barely can stand them sometimes. I'm a Democrat only because I want to vote in primaries, to be honest with you, because they drive me crazy. Right? I just want to be in the primaries. But they are the only party that even marginally is interested in us. And so we have to force them to do what we want. And the only way to force them to do what we want is, number one, put enough of them in there so that we can lose a couple of them, right? If there were 54 Democrats in there, Manchin and Sinema wouldn't matter. Yeah. They could do whatever they want. They go screaming to the wind. You need enough critical mass of power, and then you need to make demands and threats to say, if you don't do it, then I won't support you.
And if I'm not mistaken, in West Virginia, the Democrats support Joe Manchin.
They do?
Yeah, he represents where he's from.
Because the only vote...
I think it's the Republicans.
The Republicans support him.
But the Democrats
do too.
Have put him in office.
They keep voting for him, but he fundraises with Republicans. Yeah. I mean, they hold fundraisers for him where he's raising ample amounts of money, filling his coffers with it, and still voting against Democratic.
And the Democratic leadership supports him because they only care about one vote that he takes for leader. And the thing is, and that's the other piece of it, remember, whoever's majority leader, the Chuck Schumers of the world, they only care about one vote he takes for leader. And if he votes for leader, he can do whatever he wants. Because they're like, we just need a Democrat. And so they don't care what he does. They let him run wild. But the people who should stop him from running wild are the probably 40% of people who could register to vote who don't vote.
Right.
Poor people. And I'm talking about poor white. This is not a black state. It's a white state. And the people there are the second poorest other than Mississippi in the country. And most of them up in the hills, they don't vote. It's not them. They don't vote. They just stay home because they just think it can't help them. And that's that's where you're talking about the coalition politics comes in. Because poor white people are not in good shape either.
Yeah.
They don't vote.
Yeah.
So they don't help themselves,
So, man, you're going to be able to hear more conversations like this Sunday at 10 p.m. on The Culture is Black Women, right?
That's
yes,
right.
Yes.
We're very much looking forward to it. And look, we don't just talk politics. We talk life, we talk dating, we talk hair, we talk love, we talk about our brothers, our black men. So it's a lot. I mean, it's really genuinely what happens.
It's culture.
It's culture. And
Absolutely.
It's what happens when black women gather. And this is like you get to eavesdrop on a conversation that you wouldn't normally be invited to. So that's really the lens that we offer.
And it's a lot of fun. It's fun.
It's fun. I mean, even Joy and I have watched it like twice now, and we still laugh each and every time. And I just found out though that Joy did not eat a lot because we were talking so much, and I'm like, this is why every shot of me, I'm like, tell me what you was saying about doing. I'm like, eating
First of all, I had killer shapewear on. If I had tried to eat, I would have exploded. My whole outfit would have exploded. I had 2 pairs of shapewear on. I was trying to hold this belly in. That's what I was trying to do.
Sometimes you got to pick your outfit carefully based on how much you plan to eat.
Right,
ma'am.
Right.
Ma'am, listen. I wasn't loose flowing like I am today. I was wearing something tight, so I was like, I was not gonna bite anything.
Well, it's Joy-Ann Reid and Tiffany Cross. The Culture is Black Women. 10 p.m. this Sunday on MSNBC. Thank you for joining us, Queens.
Thank you for having us.
And
it's always fun.
Make sure to watch Joy every night on the Readout.
Yes, please.
And Tiffany on Saturday mornings.
Saturday mornings,
absolutely.
10 to 12. We do it for the culture every week.
Thank you.
It's the Breakfast Club.